Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech this Nazir daf Mem Tes. We're going to begin on the very top of Mem Tes and Aleph. So we learn out from these extra words regarding a Nazir, L'Aviv, L'Imo, L'Choso, Achiv, different drushes. Regarding a Nazir, we know a Nazir is not allowed to become tummy even to his closest relatives, but he is allowed to become tummy to a mace mitzvah. And also, we learned out from Lachoso in yesterday's daf, if a person is about to do the mitzvah of Karban Pesach or Bris Milah, which is Chayv Kares, so in that situation, you would maybe think that even for a mace mitzvah you can't. That's why we have this extra drush, Lachoso. And according to the Shita of Rabbi Kiva, in the situation of a Nazir who is also a Kohen Gadol, if already we're matir, even though he has both lavin, so we're going to say that also when he only has one lav, and therefore if it's either a Nazir or a Kohen Gadol, because we're not going to make a chiluk whether it's mali trei lavin or mali chad lav. It's not going to make any difference, and therefore it's going to be mufne, those extra words, to again teach us the din of mace mitzvah. So we now continue on Mem Tesamud Aleph, at the very top. Rabbi Kiva michti. Loshna Kohen Gadol Chudei Loshna Kohen Gadol V'hu Nazir Nafkim Achiv. So as we said, there's no nafkamina whether it's one lav or two lavin. The din is that if you are just a Kohen Gadol, or you're a Kohen Gadol and you're also a Nazir, the same din apply. You cannot become tamei. Either of them can't become tamei, even separately, a Nazir or a Kohen Gadol. Certainly if you're both. However, when it comes to a mace mitzvah, the din is also the same, that even if you're both, you can also become tamei. So therefore, we all learned it all out, lo-achiv, so therefore, lo-aviv lo-imo, lo-muli. So then why do we need the words lo-aviv lo-imo? In other words, why do we need one over the other? So let's look at the Mefarish. Ika la-mashma ma-lo-achiv, dahashta kohen gadol v'hu nazir mitama, from achiv. If you're both, mitama mace mitzvah koshkin kohen gadol chud, certainly if you're just a kohen gadol, L'Aviv Nami. Also it says L'Aviv, the Eina Matama, you can't become tummy from your father, Mashma, Le Me'al Kol Nafshois Meis Kedol El, like we said before. You already learned that out in general, that prohibition of becoming tummy to even Kroivim. Hadakas Rachman L'Aviv Imo, L'Basar Hachi. So it's mentioned after that already. So Lamuli, why do you need those words? Hakamashwan, Me'al Kol Nafshois Meis. We already learned it out from this other generic pasuk of Kol Nafshois Meis, that you're not allowed to become tamei even for a karev. So why do we need l'aviv l'imo? Sricha. So we need both. Very interesting. You would maybe think that your father, in certain regards, is your closest relative. In certain regards, your mother is the closest relative. Why? Maybe the reason why you can't become tamei to your father is mishum dechazaka ba'almahu. The reality is, this is before DNA testing, we do not know definitively, 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt. You may look identical to your father, but it's only a chazaka that this is your child. It's very possible, without getting into too many details, that this may not be your father. But we still say that even though it's only a chazaka, because we say it's your father. And since it's only a chazaka, it's not 100% it's your father. So we said, you know what? Don't become tamei to him, you Nazir. DLD say latamua. When it comes to a mother, it's a 100% fact certainty that this is your mother. So this is a much more definitive relative. So maybe if it didn't mention emo, maybe you would think that Yutaka could become tamei for your mother. That's why it needs to mention the emo. Because of emo, maybe the other way around. Maybe your father's a stronger relative. Maybe you can't become tamei to your mother, because little your seed doesn't go after them. In other words, the pasuk says mishpachos of kari mishpacha, lo mishpachas aim kari mishpacha. So we know, am I a kohen? It's all totally on who my father is. So, because of that, or the entire pasuk in Bamidbar, the beginning of Sefer B'Midbar, Seuas Rosh Kol Das B'nai Yisrael, you should count all the Jews, L'mishbachayisam, L'veis Avoisam, B'mispar Shemos, Kol Zachal Gulgolsam, you should count all of the males, all these people, and it's L'veis Avoisam, connected to the fathers. So there's an Emel L'tamale, so maybe you could become tummy to your father, Kamash Mulan. So it's very interesting. So you can learn out from here, again, the two possible ways. Maybe your father is more important, or is a closer relative, or maybe your mother's a closer relative, and therefore maybe because of the closer connection, you could become tummy for them. That's why you need the Aviv and Imo to teach you that. So this was question 13 as well as TB 24. It's exactly what I just read, so I'm not going to say the answer again. Let's just read the language of the question. The Abed B'Gemara Libner B'Kima de Itzrach Krab and Nazir Heinu Aviv Heinu Imo de Matam Lahem. So again, how do we know this? So your mother maybe is a strong relative because she's definitely your parent. Your father, because we go after your father as far as whether you're a Kohen, etc. Now the question is V'al Kol Nafshos Meis Lo Yavo Lamali. The entire pasuk of V'al Kol Nafshos Meis Lo Yavo Lo Aviv Imo Yitama. So in Sefer V'ikra Chaf Aleph, it says that a Nazir is not allowed to become Tamei Meis. So why do we need this? So if we look actually in the Rush down here, Al Kol Nafshos Meis Lamali Agav de Darish Nefesh Meis de Nazir Boy Namli Liders de Kohen Gadol. So this pasuk is not by a Nazir. This pasuk is actually a quote from the Kohen Gadol. So what do we do with this pasuk as we continue to that short Amud Mem Testament Beis? So I'll call Afuki Rechoikim. Everyone is including even relatives. You're not to become Tameh to a Kohen Gadol. Mace Lafuki Kroivim, that he can't even become Tameh to any of his relatives. Nafashais Lafuki Revias Dam. Hishiatzim Mishnei Mesim. Shematama b'oil, shenemar kol nafshos meis lo yavo. So we learn out from this language because it says nafshos, which means if there's two bodies, lo yavo. So we see that if there's enough dam, says the Mafar, shem yatsa revias dam beis mesim eno matama. So it's coming to, so that's what it's saying. It's excluding revias dam that came from two mesim shematama b'oil. Shenemar al kol nafshos meis lo yavo, that he's not allowed to come in contact with even a revias dam of two different mesim. Okay, that's the way to read that. Okay. Do I have another question here? Question TA24 possibly. Okay, so there you go. TA24. I didn't mark that down before. So this is the drasha. Revias dam shiyatzim mishnei mesim etam b'oil shneimar al kol nafshos meis lo yavo. He explains it very nicely over here. He says because nafshos is mashma trey, two, because it's in plural. Meis is mashma shir echad, even for one measurement. So that would be enough. Okay. Fine. All right. I'm not sure. It says it's quoting a Taisus. I'm not sure which Taisus that is. Okay. Maybe it's in this. It's in here. Okay. Let's see the next mission. Masnisa. Al elu tumois hanazir megaleach. So we know a nazir is not to become tamei. If he becomes tamei mace, so the din is, well, he can become tamei as we said in other things, zav and saras. But if he becomes tamei mace, the din is that he has to go through this process of shaving, and then it's soiser, and depending exactly when it took place. So when do we have to do this? So first of all, al hames, if he becomes contact with a dead body, then it says val kazayas min hames, which that itself is hard to understand. If you become tamei, touch an entire dead body, okay, what's the chiddush over there? Because even a kazayas from a mace, you're going to be tamei. So why does it even mention mace? The Gemara is going to talk about that. Yal kazayas nutzel. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what that is. It's some type of liquid that comes forth from a mace. The al moli tarvid rekev, when it comes to a spoonful of dust that came from a corpse that also is going to make the person tameh. So the Taisa says it's rakvoin v'afuris habam and a mace. Basically, the ashes and dust that comes from and tarvid is a kaf, is a spoon. So Taisa says. Okay. So weiter al shedra val golgoilus. If he comes in contact with the skull or the spinal column, so also he'll be tameh in that regard. And on this, Taisus' chiddush is v'afal b'shein oleha basar klal. Even if it has no meat, no flesh on it, the Gemara is gonna basically ask, more boy I al atervayu o al chada minhoin. Is that talking about both or just one? So that's going to be discussed not in today's daf, but just to understand the basics of it. Vel aver min a mace, even a limb that comes from a dead body, which again, why does it, even an aver, he can become tameh, so why does it mention mace? It's obvious. Vel aver min a chai, sheshul basar karoi. If let's say you actually have a limb from an amputated person, that person's actually alive, but that limb actually still has flesh on it, then in that situation, says the Mafarish, that so it doesn't even have to have a kazayas, but it's enough that it's it looks like the same flesh. So it's like maybe a newly amputated body part. Yal chatzi kav atzamois, and a half measure of a kav of bones. Yal chatzi lug dam, and a half a lug of blood. Which we're gonna see Taisus in a second what that means. V'al magoi, v'al mason, v'al ahilon. When it comes to touching these things, lifting up, or being in the same oihel, in all these situations, that is the din. Okay, so let's look at this Taisus. V'al chatzi kavat samois. It says v'alva pi shematama b'oil b'roi v'hakav k'de'isa b'hedya b'masnisan. So a person can become tummy oil by coming in contact with a 1/4 kav b'per kama b'ohalois elu matamen b'oil. So nonetheless, these are going to be matamen b'oil. V'kachashiv roi vatsamois haba meroi minyano merab binyano mikol makam halachahu de'ein hanaz megleach el al chatzi kav. So even though the din is really should be roi v'hakav, that he's is a 1/4 of a kav of bones. So why does it mention a half a kav? He becomes tummy even with a 1/4 kav. So the reason why it mentions that, the halach is that when it comes to a nazir, he's only gleich on up to a chatzi kav. Only if it's already half. V'leiko afrushi chatzi kav misharet samois she'en meroi binyano. Okay, and we see the next Taisus v'al chatzi lug dam, a half a lug. V'aval pi shematama b'oil b'revius, even though it's really a 1/4, so it's in just like a 1/4 kav of bones, or the liquid form, a chatzi revius. Why chatzi? It's even not just a chatzi lug, but even a revius lug. He's a mastis and bohalos mekomakam in anus magleach el al chatzi lug v'shirin halacha mosh mesinai. Question 14. Elu shnei davar metamen ba'oil. V'afal pi kain ein anaz magleach lein mishum the halacha mosh mesinai anaz be'inan shira tvei. When it comes to a nazir, it needs a bigger measurement. So again, that's what it is. So when it comes to even a 1/4 kav of bones, mirov minyano o binyano, or a vias lug dam, a lug of blood. However, when it comes to a nazir, a 1/4 is not enough. It needs to be a half lug of blood, or a half kav of bones. Okay, let's continue in the Mishnah. V'al etzem kisoira. When it comes to a bone the size of a barley seed, so imagav al masoi. So it's a bone which is the size of a barley seed, can only be matama b'magva masa, but it's not big enough to be matama b'oil. It has to be, again, roi minyan, rabinyan, golgelas, the shedra, the things that are mentioned here. Al elu hanazir megaleach, on these things the nazir has to shave. Umaz b'shlish v'shvi, he has to have the par duma sprinkled on him on days 3 and 7. V'saiser as hakoidmin, and it's saiser, it cancels out everything before. V'enu mas limnois el ad sheyitar mevias korbanosov, and that which we discussed at great length before, that he's not allowed to start his counting process again until he's completely cured from everything. From everything. Okay, so he has to actually bring all of his korbanos, then only afterwards is he able to start his purification counting as a nazir. Says the Gemara, Tanaban, Achar Petiraso shel Reb Meir. So when Reb Meir died, Armel hen Rabbi Yehuda Talmidim. So Rabbi Yehuda said to his students, Al yichnasu Talmid Reb Meir lekan. I do not want Reb Meir's students to come here. Memnei shikant raninhain. They are contentious. Lo limut Torah hein boyin. They're not coming really to learn Torah. El kaf chani b'halacha is hein boyin. They're only going to come to cause troubles in halacha. So Dachak Sumchus v'nichnas. Sumchus, who was one of Reb Meir's students, pushed in because they didn't want him in, but he shoved himself in. By the way, Taisa says, "L'tzareni," to cause me pain. But nichnas, he entered. So Amlehen said, "Kach shanali Reb Meir." Reb Meir, who is the Stam Mishnah over here, he said, "Al elu tameus benazir megaleach." These are the situations where, when you become tummy, you have to shave. Al mace, when you have a dead body and you come in contact with it, b'mag v'mas of oil. Or for that matter, about kazayis min mace. So Kas Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda started getting angry. V'yomlehen lo kach amarti lachem. I told you, al yichnasu talmidi Reb Meir lekan. I do not want Reb Meir's students in here. Demnei shekant run in hain, because they're contentious. Al kazayis min mace megaleach. So when it comes to a kazayis mace, you're megaleach al hameis kol shekain. So certainly when it comes to a kazayis mace, you have to shave. But so again, well, that's the whole question. That why is it? Again, it's interesting why this is what was said. But if you go through Shas, there are numerous times that Sumchus pushed in to ask a question. It's brought down in Gemara Kedushin. There's other places in Shas, but this is one of the questions that he posed, that he was discussing about someone who becomes tamei, which is interesting. Of course, there's probably a connection to Reb Meir's death and this whole notion that al kazayis min mace megalech al mace kol shekain. So why are you mentioning this? What's the whole thing? So as we continue Nunam and Aleph, Rav Yosi Yomru Meir, they say Meir Shacham, he died. This is more in Kedushin also. Yehuda Kas, Yehuda's angry. Yosi Shasak, so he's talking about himself. Should I be silent? Torah matahel. What's going to happen to the Torah? So I have no choice. I have to speak up. So Rav Yosi, lo nitzrucha. Our Mishnah is talking about elamesh enol of kazayis basar. We're talking about even a mace that does not have a kazayis basar. The din is that you'll become tamei. V'yadayin yomer, you can still ask the same question. Al aver mimenu megaleach, just a single limb you shave. Al kul kol shekain. Ela kedi Reb Yochanan. So rather we have two answers. What is it talking about when it says a mace? What's the chiddush? So it's talking about the following. So El Kedim Reb Yochanan. Lo nitzrucha el nefel shlo niskashru ivara beginin. If you have a miscarriage, you have a stillborn child that in which its limbs did not develop, begidin with sinews. So hachinami b'nefel shlo niskashru ivara begidin. So let's look at the Mefarish. That the limbs, the sinews are not really attached. Even though there's no basar, nonetheless you're still tamei in that situation. So this is considered to be a mace, even though it's not really a formed fetus. Rabbi Omer lo nitzrucha el roi binyano rov minyanoi shein behen roiva atzamos. So we mentioned already in the Mishnah that if you have to have a roiva atzamos, or a chatzi kav atzamos. So over here it's talking about if it doesn't even have a quarter of bone But we're talking about it, but there's rov minyan, and rov binyan. So in that situation, then also the din is the same, that you can become tummy. Says the Mefarish, Ki amar Meir barov binyano shel meis, or barov minyano shin olehen kazayis baser. If you have the majority of the bone structure, or the majority of the number of bones in the body, so, and he comes in contact with that, even though it doesn't have any basar. The ein bein kulo roiva hakavat samois. It doesn't have even a quarter kav of bone. The afagav de ba'alma loy havi chashav le'inin tumas oil elin kin shebehen roivat samos. So we saw in Taisus, you have to have at least a quarter to become tameh. Gami nazir havi chashav kemei shalim. Over here, even though it doesn't even have a roiva, quarter of a kav of atzamais, nonetheless for the dinim of a nazir, it's considered to be like a mei shalim. Hoyel de isbe ro minyano shumatama lav megalech. So it's a tremendous chiddush, because normally to become even tameh, you need to have a quarter kav of atzamos, as we saw in Taisus. We need a half kav of bone. But over here, it doesn't even have a quarter, but because it's ro binyan, so that already is enough to say that the din is that you become tameh. Question 1. Hanazir megalech al hames al kazayis ben hames al kazayis megalech al hames al koshikain. So either l'nitzach el nefel, a stillborn shel niskasher ivar begidden, which again is not fully formed, or ro binyano shein behen roiva atzamos adkan.